Preaching time. Ephesians chapter 6. Good to have you in church today. Ephesians 6. Ephesians chapter 6, last week we focused on the first 4 verses about the relationship between parents and children. And I'll go ahead and read those verses, and then we will start our text starting in verse 5. But verse 1, it says, "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor thy father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the earth. And ye fathers, provoke not your children to wrath, but bring them up in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling, in singleness of your heart, as unto Christ, not with eye service, as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service as to the Lord, and not to men, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. And ye masters, do the same things unto them, forbearing threatening, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respect of persons with him." Today we're going to talk about something very, very practical. Workplace Christianity. A lot of times we don't put the two together. You know, there's Christianity at church, but then work is just work. Not according to the Bible. Your Christianity is to be lived out in every aspect of your life, including the workplace. So let's pray once again. Father, as we come to you and open up your word, I pray that you would just grant us understanding in what it means and what it means for our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. What you need to do this morning is use your imagination a little bit. Have you had enough coffee to do that? Are you ready to think a little bit this morning? Good. Imagine with me, you got to go back in your mind about 1900 years into the past. And imagine that you were born into a totally different kind of society than what you live in today. That you were not born as this naturally born American citizen here in northern Minnesota, but instead that you grew up and you lived in ancient Ephesus. Place totally different, under the Roman Empire, and it was situated on the far western portion of Asia Minor or Turkey. It's on in the area of Greece. Ephesus was like kind of the connection point between Europe and Asia. It was at Ephesus, this port city, this booming trade city. It was like a bridge from east to west in terms of culture. And the population of Ephesus was at least 250,000 people, which was an enormous city in that time. Now, today we have cities of millions of people, but it wasn't like that before. The population of the earth just wasn't that way. And so that was a very large city, 250,000 people. And if you had lived during that period of history, there is a 1 in 4 chance that you would have been a slave. 25% of that population were enslaved. They were, some of those had been born into slavery because their mothers were slaves. If your mom was a slave, too bad, so sad, you're a slave. That's your lot in life. Some of them had been taken captive through war. Some had been kidnapped and sold into slavery. Some had been sold by their own family. You know, if times got really hard and you had one kid that was maybe a little more difficult than the others, okay, we'll pad the account. I mean, it's awful, but they literally would do that. They would sell their children, they would sell people into slavery to make ends meet. And if you had lived during that time, you would know that slavery in the Roman world was not exactly what we think of slavery here, like in the early part of the United States. Here in the U.S., slavery was largely based on race. And so if someone was a person of color, they could be enslaved. But it wasn't like that throughout history. That type of racial enslavement was a byproduct of Darwinian evolution. Okay, when people started to believe evolution, they believed that certain races of people were superior to others, and if there was some that they deemed to be lower on the evolutionary scale, they were in some way subhuman, and they could then enslave those people because they really had no rights. That's where the American form of racism and slavery and segregation and all of that had its roots. Now, in ancient cultures, it wasn't based on that. Anybody could be a slave of any color just because you had happened to get kidnapped or taken in war, or those things that we mentioned. You could become another person's property. And now, in Rome, there was a way to purchase or to earn your own freedom. In fact, a lot of former slaves, once freed, would go on to become full citizens, and they would own many slaves of their own. And it was seen almost like a status symbol, that depending on how many slaves you owned, that showed how far up the ladder you were. And people they would bring 10 slaves with them to the marketplace just to have a trail of slaves behind them to show how important and how wealthy that they were. And it's really hard to comprehend the culture and the way of life that they lived in, because slavery was not seen as a moral problem. We think of it and we think, oh, it's the worst. You know, that's the worst, blackest part of our history is when we enslaved people. But in reality, historically, the Western world was the first place on earth where we started to regard individual human rights. And we started to see slavery as an evil thing. America has always looked down upon for that period of slavery that we had. But nobody ever talks about the fact that we were the first nation in history who were willing to fight a bloody civil war to end it. It was that changing of philosophy and idea to shed our blood to destroy that institution. Before modern times, slavery was seen as perfectly normal. It was seen as a legitimate way for society to function, and they saw it even as necessary. Slaves had virtually no rights. They were literally the property of somebody else. They were not a person, they were property. And any benefits that they had in life were just a result of the master, of the owner, protecting his asset. So in the same way that you take good care of your car, or you change the oil on your mower to make sure that it keeps running right, they would often treat their slaves quite well in terms of taking care of them, but it wasn't because they were people, it was because they were trying to protect their asset. They were trying to make them keep them healthy for longer and make them fit for service through the long haul so that their investment would not be wasted. It was often in his best financial interest, the master's interest, to take good care of them, although legally he wasn't bound to. A master could inflict any punishment he desired, up to and including death. And he had to he needed no permission. There was no consequences. If he decided to beat or to kill one of his servants that frustrated him enough, he could kill them, and since they were not deemed people but property, no consequences would come to him. That's what the life of a slave was. Now, when the Apostle Paul came into this city of Ephesus, preaching the gospel of Christ, many who believed his message were slaves. In fact, it may have been that more slaves than free men would have found the gospel message appealing, to consider the hope that there is in Jesus Christ. And if they're just at the bottom rung and they have nothing to live for, they look and say, I need something. I need this. And so it's those who were saved Slave or free, they would be baptized. They would become a member of the church there in Ephesus with full rights, regardless of their position in society. And so there's no doubt situations where master and slave were both saved Christians and members of the same congregation. And so they could be sitting somewhere opposite, and this person has zero rights, and that person over there owns this person. But they're both saved, and they both exist in the same church, where they both have an equal say and an equal vote. It'd be kind of weird, wouldn't it? Interesting dynamic. But again, it was just normal. This was life. Some were slaves, some were free. And that's how society worked. They were considered brothers and sisters in Christ. And in church, they were equals, even though in society, one owned the other. And Paul, he never in Scripture commands masters to free their slaves. He never encourages the slaves to rebel and fight for their freedom. And that's why it's so hard for us to look at this and not accept the notion of slavery as a legitimate part of society, but it was. Whether we agree with it or not, we can't take our enlightened American ways and impose it on an ancient culture and society. This passage and others show that there was a way in which people could be good Christians, pleasing to God, and still own slaves. Amazing, isn't it? It doesn't compute in our mindset, but it literally worked that way. And it was a major part of the life and the culture of Ephesus and the whole Roman world. It was one of the most important human relationships people had in their day-to-day lives. And so Paul addresses it here. He shows them how that being a Christian ought to make them better servants. Or, if you're a master, it ought to make you a better master. Christianity should influence every part of their lives. So how in the world does all this slavery and people owning one another, how does that relate to us in 2016 American culture? Well, I think the obvious and most direct application is in our work relationships. Okay, if you work for a business or you work for a boss, you are in one way their servant. You are. You're a free person, and so you receive compensation for your service. You're not a slave, but it means that you serve them voluntarily. So you went and put in an application to work for that company or to work for that individual, and they hired you, and so you made a deal, and okay, I will give you wages and you will give me service. And now while you are there, while you are under that employment, while you're clocked in, you're there to perform work, to be the servant for them. And so it's not a very big leap to take these principles we find here in Ephesians and apply them to our own workplace relationships. All the principles for servants still apply to employees. And all the principles for masters still hold true for Christian employers or anybody with people working underneath them. And so let's think about work for a little while, okay? Because let's face it, work isn't always the most enjoyable part of our lives, okay? Now, you ought to enjoy work. I hope you can enjoy what you do to some extent. But it's a big part of our lives. If you think about it, you tally up the time that you sleep, the time that you spend with your family. There's probably nothing that you do in life that takes up a bigger portion of your life than work, right? Just going, if you work on a regular basis anyway, and even more so than your own family, you're spending time with people at work. And so seeing that it takes up this huge chunk of our lives, it stands to reason that God would have something to say about how we're supposed to be Christians around those we work with. And our faith is not just confined to Sunday, to church, where it's when we get up on Monday and we go to work. And it still applies. Christianity is supposed to be lived out in every area of life. So we're going to talk about how to be a Christian if you're a servant or an employee working under someone else. And so part of this is changing your perspective. how you view work, how you view who you are working for, because as a Christian, you are not just serving your boss. You are also serving the Lord. That's your first priority. So let's just work our way through this. Number one, serve as unto Christ. Look at some of these verses. Verse 5, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling and singleness of heart. Look at the end of the verse. As unto Christ. Verse 6, not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ. Verse 7, with goodwill doing service as to the Lord and not to men. So the point is very clear. When you go to work, you aren't just working for them. You're working for Him. You're going, and when you clock in there, you're not just doing service for that company. You're doing service for the King of Kings, for your Lord, for your true boss. And we have this way of putting things into this category. Like, the work that I do around the church, that is work for the Lord. But when I'm at work, that's work I'm doing, for the company or for my wages or for myself or whatever it might be. And you have these categories. But if you're just at work, it doesn't matter what the job description is. It doesn't matter even what your day-to-day tasks look like. You could plug any kind of job description into this. If you're selling cars, or you're taking Caribou Coffee orders, or you're helping somebody out to their car with the groceries, or whatever it might be that you do, as a Christian, you don't do that anymore just for a paycheck. You don't. You don't do it just to be a good employee for your company. You do it as a servant of Jesus Christ. That's what your work is to be about. I labor as a servant of the Lord, and you understand that. I do the work, you could say, of the Lord. But so do you. Some people say that I am a minister. It's not a title I usually use, but I'm a minister. I am. But so are you, if you're a Christian. Yeah, well, you're in full-time ministry. Okay, so you clock in and out? Is that what you're saying? No, if you're a Christian, you're a full-time Christian too. You're also in full-time ministry. It's just that where our paychecks come from happen to be from different places. But our boss, our Lord, is the same. We're all doing the same work. And so is the Lord really interested in that kind of stuff? Is He really interested if somebody is packing up tacos at Taco Bell? And can you do that for the Lord? Can you connect with new clients to help build a business and do that for the Lord? Absolutely you can. There's a way in which you can. He's very interested that as you serve at your workplace, that you're doing it as though He were your direct supervisor. And a lot of people don't really love their direct supervisors, right? Sometimes supervisors aren't so fun to work for. But you need to remember, your main supervisor that you are there to please and to work for is Christ. He is our motivation in everything that we do. And maybe you're like, no, I've got a bunch of kids at home. I don't work. Okay, you're a homemaker. You do work, okay? I never, ever again make the mistake of saying, you don't work. No, come backwards, come back. I can't say that, because moms, homemakers work like crazy. But, we get to come home and we take it a little more easy. Mom, it's like 24 hours a day. And whatever you're doing, if you're cooking or you're doing dishes or you're homeschooling or doing laundry or whatever, that's good work in and of itself. It's a noble work because family is a noble cause. It is. But you're doing that not just for your family. You're doing it for Christ. It ought to revolutionize our perspective in whatever our day-to-day tasks are, that I'm not doing it for them. I'm not doing it even for me. I'm doing it for Him. And that'll change your work. That'll change your work ethic. That'll change your work attitude. It's a game changer. That all of this isn't just about being satisfactory to your boss. It's about performing the kind of work that would please the Lord. How do we do this? He continues on. So first is serve as unto Christ. Secondly, serve obediently. Serve obediently. Remember last week, we focused on verse 1 there. Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. And all the parents are like, listen up. Listen up over there. You need this, you know. You need to obey your parents in the Lord. And we all agree that that is what is needed for young people, how that they are to obey their parents. Obey right away with the right attitude. Yeah, that's right. And parent, amen. Listen to this, kids. Listen. Yeah, all right. And that's all fine and well until you realize that the exact same standard is applied to you when you go to work. Yeah. Look at verse 5. Same words. Servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh. Be obedient. And he doesn't say, just to obey when your boss is kind and he's reasonable, or it only applies when they treat you as part of the team. No. Regardless of the attitude or the character of the person that you are working for, if you have agreed to serve as an employee, you need to obey. Remember, he's talking to slaves here. They didn't have it nicey nice. When the master snapped his fingers, servants, remember, you're serving Christ. So obey. Do as they tell you. Just plain old, simple, humble obedience. No need to fuss or argue or complain. Just do as you're told. And if they ask more of you than your job description says, you know what? Just do it. If they haven't given you a raise like they should have, or if they don't treat you right, the blessing in our culture is you have the right to leave. You do. You can change jobs, although that can be done ethically as well. You need to do that in the right way. You have the option to go find a new master. That's a pretty awesome responsibility and that we can have. But as long as you have chosen to serve, you obey those who are over you. That just makes sense. Serve obediently. Thirdly, serve respectfully. Again, in verse 5, servants, be obedient to them that are your masters according to the flesh, with fear and trembling. In chapter 5, we dealt with the marriage relationship between husbands and wives, and it's very clear in there that the husband is to be the head of the wife, and that the wife is to love and to, the word is revere her husband. So this God-fearing type of respect for her husband, and the men were sitting there going, amen, amen, right? And fear and respect, and you wives that heard it, it's good stuff, isn't it? It's good Bible truth that's there, that there ought to be that healthy God type of God-fearing respect for a husband. And the husband said, amen. But then he says, when you go to work for your master, that you should do so with fear and trembling. That there ought to be that same type of respect for those that you work for. The same type that you would want of your wife, for her to respect you and respect your leadership, even when you fail, even when your attitude isn't the best. You need to offer that to your master as well, your employer, your supervisor, your master according to the flesh. Well, let's be honest. Some of these masters aren't very respectable, right? Sometimes it's very hard to respect somebody that treats you like dirt. So some men have a problem reporting to a lady. It doesn't matter. You owe her your respect. What if they're younger than me? What if they're this whippersnapper? They don't know anything. It doesn't matter. You owe them your respect. Well, he's a jerk. He's an idiot. He doesn't know what he's talking about. It doesn't matter. You've agreed to serve. So serve with fear and trembling. Well, I don't fear him. Do you fear him? Do you fear Christ? Do you respect him? He's the one you're serving. And so you serve Christ as you serve those you work under. And so just as in marriage, there are times you can disagree, and that's fine, to voice disagreement, but there's no justification to be disrespectful to those who are in authority. So serve with respect. Fourthly, serve with loyalty. Loyalty. Boy, that's something that's not around in the workplace much anymore. Verse 5, at the end of the verse, it says, in singleness of your heart as unto Christ. Now, again, there's a point where you may or may not be able to continue serving that person or company any longer, and that's fine. You're free to make that choice as the Lord leads. But be a loyal employee where you are. Where you are. You know, I often use Carl for my examples because he loves being pointed out and, you know, out in front in the spotlight. But Carl has been very loyal to Lukens for, 19 years now? Something like that? Yeah. And he loves his company. He owns his company, part of it, right? And what if Carl said, you know what, I'd really like to pick up some work on the side. That's fine, you can do that. But what if he would start picking up an evening shift over at Marketplace? That's a problem there, okay? I don't know, there might even be ramifications for his current job, because at that point it would show he's only in it for the money, right? He's not there for the company. He's not there to help build that business. He's just in it to give me my paycheck, you know, and I'll get it from you. I'll get it from your competitor. I don't care. I just want to work for money. That's not loyalty. All right, so be loyal where you are. Now the Lord, like I said, could lead you out of one and over to even a competitor or something like that, but it still ought to be done with integrity and ethics, and there's a way to do these things that is right. But while you work at one place, be dependable, be loyal there, be single. It's a singleness of heart, to where you're not divided in your attention. While you work, be dependable. The term indicates that your heart should be in it. So be focused, be diligent to help serve your master, the verse says, as unto Christ. That is the type of intensity we ought to put into our work. That is our motivation. Fifthly, and we've kind of touched on this a little bit, but serve with integrity. Look at verse 6. Not with eye service as men pleasers, but as the servants of Christ, doing the will of God from the heart, with good will doing service as to the Lord and not unto men. You know what eye service means, don't you? That if your job, if you're supposed to be cleaning up this certain area and you've got the broom and boss is nowhere to be found, and you're just kind of leaning up against the wall, catching some Z's, got your broom, and then you hear some footsteps. You know, and you're cheerfully going about your business. You're busy little bee, and then they pass on by, and back to my nap, right? You know what? You're not really working. You're not really serving. You're just doing eye service. You're just serving what can be seen. You're not doing it with integrity. That's eye service, and it can be done so many different ways. You know, and there's a million ways people figure out how not to work at work. It's amazing, and they do it. And if your boss shows up, it shouldn't fluster you. You know, it shouldn't be like, oh no, here they come, or the big boss, or the manager, or somebody showing up. It shouldn't make you wring your hands, because you know what? You're just faithfully doing your job, whether they're there or not. You know, it's kind of like if you see a police officer, does it cause panic in you? That's because you break the law, okay? If you just drive how you're supposed to, police officers won't worry you so much, okay? And it's like that with work. You're not there just to look busy. You're there to be busy, to actually do the job that they hired you to do. They're paying you, so do your job and work hard to make money, not just for you, but for the employer. Because when you make them money, guess what? They pay you money. It doesn't come out of thin air or out of their pockets. It comes out of the service that you perform for the company. Now consider that he's writing to slaves. No rights, no paycheck, no incentives or benefits. And yet, even as a slave, he says, you know what? Doesn't matter. Do your job. Don't just do it when the master is watching. You work for him, whether or not he's around. That's ethical. That's serving with integrity. What about men pleasers there? Not with eye service, as men pleasers. These are the ones who fake loyalty. They pretend like they're the most loyal people in the world. I don't know if this is a good phrase or not, but they kiss up to the boss, okay? The Greek word actually means to court or to fawn over, okay? And you've known people like that they'll say whatever the boss wants them to say. They will do whatever they want to do as men pleasers, and they're not doing it to be loyal. They're doing it to position themselves, right? They're doing it to get in a better place, and not only will it sour the relationship with the employer, it'll destroy any relationships you had with your coworkers. Because it's not ethical. It's not the way to work with integrity. Now, be loyal, but don't be a men pleaser. Don't try to position yourself that way. That's not serving with integrity. Do it in a way that would just please the Lord. Do it with the right motives. Number 6. Are you enjoying this? This is very practical, isn't it? This is just bottom shelf kind of stuff. And I'm thankful that God gives us these tips for life. But 6thly, serve for more than a paycheck. Verse 8 says, knowing that whatsoever good thing any man doeth, the same shall he receive of the Lord, whether he be bond or free. Ultimately, work ought to be about more than money. Yes, you're doing it to put food on the table. I understand that. You're doing it to provide. But don't continually chase after a bigger paycheck. That's not what work is supposed to be about. The Bible even says that the love of money is the root of all evil. If you live for a paycheck and that is your goal, then I promise you will sacrifice your integrity to obtain it. You will sacrifice your family. You will sacrifice your faithfulness to church. You'll sacrifice God's will for your life because you're chasing a paycheck. Well, if I'm not going to work every day to earn a paycheck, what am I even there for? I might as well just clock out, sit at home. You're there to serve the Lord. That's why you go to work, to serve Him. If you can't glorify God with that job, find a different job where you can glorify Him. Serving Him comes first in everything we do. You know, kids, we're not going to talk about school. That wasn't really part of Paul's whole thinking and stuff. But you guys know what you do for work right now? You go to school, don't you? You do your school work. It is work, isn't it? It's not fun all the time. We don't always love work, do we? No. But do you think that it's right? And do you think that there's a way in which you can do your school work that is pleasing to the Lord? Absolutely. So you don't do it just to please mom and dad. You don't do it just to please a teacher. You do it to please the Lord. Whether you're studying or reading or writing or taking a test, all of it should be done to serve God, to serve the Lord Jesus Christ. We are to labor for Him. Well then, if I'm not working for a paycheck, I'm just working to serve the Lord, how am I going to provide for my needs? You need to recognize something, friend. It's not the paycheck that takes care of your needs. The Lord provides for your needs. He is our provider, not you. Deuteronomy 8:18 says, but that thou shalt remember the Lord thy God, for it is He that giveth thee power to get wealth. Don't trust in your wealth or your ability to get wealth. Trust in God, because He's the one who gives you the ability. He is our provider. That's why we pray to Him. That's why Jesus said to pray, give us this day our daily bread. You say, well, I'm going out to work. I'm going to earn my bread. No, you need to pray and be dependent upon Him as your provider. And then go out and work your hardest to serve Him, and He will see to it that your needs are met. When you go to work, it ought to be so much more than just a paycheck. The Lord will provide your needs. Bring that motivation to work, because honestly, you might not be getting paid what you're worth there. That's very, very possible. If you're doing it right, you're probably worth more than they're paying you. If you're the kind of servant that this is talking about, you ought to be performing at a level where they can't pay you enough to compensate for the type of work and the benefit that you are bringing to that company. So don't get too caught up in your salary or in raises or in what you deserve to make based on the work you do. That will come. But you just need to get up and go to work and do your best as unto Christ and let Him worry about your income. Do you see how that just kind of frees you up to serve the Lord and say, Lord, you know our situation. I want you to take care of us, but today I'm going to give it my all because I'm serving you. Don't live for money. Live for the Lord. He'll take care of the money and stuff. Seek ye first the kingdom of God and His righteousness, and all these things shall be added unto you. Now, I'll be honest with you about what I do for a living. It's hard to even fathom that I get to do this, and get paid to do this. It's amazing. I love it. I love what I do, and I thank the Lord that I'm able to do it. And I know that I do receive a what you could call a paycheck for what I do, but that cannot be what drives me. Okay? A pastor, the Bible says, cannot be given to filthy lucre or money. I don't even think about, and this is weird, but I don't even think about the work that I do in relation to what I'm paid. My brain doesn't connect it that way. I don't know how many hours a week I spend on church-related work. It's just my life. Okay, I just pour myself into it, and however many hours it takes, that's what it takes. And I know there's a connection, but when I go in, I'm not thinking, okay, so based on what I make, this sermon is worth this much, and every counseling session that I spend, every visit that I make, and calculate it all. No. You can't quantify it with money. The work that we're doing for Christ is beyond worth, and so there's a connection, yes, but it's almost as if it's something totally separate, to where that I get up and I'll dive into the Bible and I'll give it my all every day, and I'm studying and I'm doing the work of the ministry and stuff, and then almost as something entirely different, the Lord provides for our needs. And we receive a check to continue to live and to pay the bills and to do all these things. And again, I understand that it may feel different when you're not in full-time ministry, but that's where your perspective must change, because you are in full-time ministry. You are. And now your day-to-day activities are different from mine. Your checks are signed by somebody different than my checks are signed by. But you and I, friend, are serving the same master. We are serving the same one, the same person. And as we've seen in all these different applications, Christianity, it affects every part of our lives. And it affects both sides of a relationship. We preach to the kids, and we preach to the parents. We preach to the wives, but we also preach to the husbands. Now, before we're done, we've preached to employees and workers and stuff. Well, what about masters? What is in here for my supervisor? He needs some preaching. I'm going to give him this CD, In today's terminology, the bosses, the supervisors, the employers, what's here for them? He says in verse 9, and ye masters, do the same things unto them. So he kind of just wraps up all the stuff that we've just said about servants, and he says, now that's what they're to be doing for you. You need to do the same for them. So all the previous qualities should be shown by masters. So servants, they're to treat their masters with respect. Likewise, an employer ought to treat his employees with respect. You want loyalty and integrity from your employees, you ought to be just as loyal and trustworthy towards them. Sounds very Christian, doesn't it? Yeah. And he brings it to a whole new level because he's invoking the golden rule here. Jesus gave the golden rule in Matthew 7:12. Therefore, all things whatsoever ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them. For this is the law and the prophets. So he doesn't say, do to others as they do to you. No. As you wish they would do to you. As you wish that they would treat you, that's how you're to treat them. And so he tells masters, how would you like it if you were in their place? So he tells them, forbearing threatening. Don't threaten them. Don't get on a power kick. Treat those under you as you would want to be treated. Imagine, masters, that you had someone over you, because guess what? They do. Every master has a master. And in reality, the owner and the slave, the employer and the employee, we see it in terms of who's in authority here. But under God, we're all level. We are all serving the same master. We are all under him. And he says, knowing that your master also is in heaven, neither is there respective persons with him. He doesn't have favorites. He doesn't pick and choose. He will treat you as you ought to be treated. Now, those who are in authority have a great responsibility to treat those under them in a Christian manner. A boss ought to be thoughtful, ought to be kind, ought to be considerate and respectful of those in his employ. And even those in authority are called upon as Christians to submit their own rights for the good of others. That's something people don't understand today. But even as a boss, even when you get to a position of authority, just as a parent, sometimes you sacrifice your wants, your wishes, what benefits you for the benefit of your children under you. And as a boss, you have to be willing to take the hit sometimes. You have to be willing to say, you know what, I'll be the one to suffer here. And I'll take the heat on this. And I'm going to treat my employees right. I'm going to treat them with respect as I would want to be treated if I were there. And there are some folks who are in positions of authority, and then they go to church on Sunday, but throughout the week you'd never know they were Christians by the way that they treat their people. That kind of Christianity isn't real Christianity. Real Christianity makes you a better person in the way that you interact with other people. Whether that's at home or at church or at work, it doesn't matter. Salvation's supposed to change your life. Christ should be seen in you. And if you're saved, Christ in you should make you a better wife. It should make you a better husband, better child, better parent, a better worker, a better boss. If you're a Christian and you're no different than everybody else, then what has that Christianity really brought for your life? It hasn't changed you. I've said it before. My pastor before me said it many times. If your profession hasn't changed your life, if your beliefs haven't changed your life, you need a different profession. You ought to change your faith if it hasn't changed your life. It should be something that is real, something that is tangible, something that has made you a better person. And I'm telling you, society, it never quite works out right without Jesus Christ in the people. And your job, whatever it is, whatever your job description is, whatever your day-to-day tasks are, I'm telling you, that's a mission field. God has put you in that mission field in one way or another. And if you're a Christian, you are in the ministry there. And I'm telling you, full time. So no matter what you're doing with your hands or doing day to day, no matter your level of income, you can go and you can serve and you can make a difference, not just for today, but for eternity. If you approach it with a ministry mindset and understand, I'm not working for them, I'm not working for me, I'm working for Him. And He has put me here to do not just this task, but to do His business, to do His work of ministry. When you do it under the Lord, it changes everything. And that's what real Christianity, workplace Christianity, really ought to look like. Let's pray. Father, thank you for this time